So let's talk about this millennial reign, this 1,000-year reign of Christ. Revelation chapter 20, we're told that this angel will come down from heaven with the key to the bottomless pit. He'll have a heavy chain in his hand, and he'll seize the dragon, that old serpent who is the devil Satan. So Satan's going to be caught by this angel. He's going to be chained up, bound in chains for 1,000 years. The angel will throw him into the bottomless pit, down into Sheol, which he will then shut and lock up, so that Satan could not deceive the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were finished. So what's the millennium age going to look like? No Satan. How awesome is that? No temptation to sin. Satan is locked up for 1,000 years. It's a 1,000-year rest. Where if you follow the Sabbath model, where you got 6 days of work and then the seventh day is a day of rest, well, the earth is 6,000 years of toil. The 7,000th year, that last 1,000 years, is a Sabbath for the earth and for those who follow Messiah. Then after the 1,000 years, Satan will be released for a little while, and we'll talk about that in our final class next week. There will be thrones, and people sitting on them, given the authority to judge. And the souls of those who are beheaded for the testimony about Jesus and for proclaiming the word of God will be there, will be judging. Okay. They who did not worship the beast or his statue or take the mark on their foreheads or their hands, they will all come to life again. So again, what's better? Final exam. Take the number of the beast or die. I hope you all say die. Do not take the number, get killed. Yes, it'll hurt for a little bit, but you won't become a zombie. You won't get gorged by vultures. And hey, you're going to come to life again. Here it is in Revelation 20 verse 4. So when a gun is put to your head or a sword is put to your neck and you're told, take the beast or be killed, be killed. Please remember this verse. You will come to life again and you will reign with Christ for 1,000 years. If you choose to keep your life at that moment and take the number of the beast, you'll live for maybe another 3.5 years or so and then become a zombie and get gorged by vultures. So you want 3.5 years of life, or you want 1,000 years reigning with Christ on earth? Take your pick. Verse 5, this is the first resurrection. The rest of the dead will not come back to life until the 1,000 years end. Okay, so again, we'll talk about that in the next class, how those down in Sheol, down below, will come up after the millennium for judgment. Blessed and holy are those who share in the first resurrection. For them, the second death holds no power, but they will be priests of God and of Christ and will reign with him 1,000 years. There's that 1,000 years again. Okay, how is that 1,000 years going to look? Well, in Ezekiel chapter 40, the 40s of Ezekiel, it describes this Millennial Temple. 40 through 42 kind of describes this big temple that's going to exist during the millennium. The plans are ready for them to be built, or for it to be built on the Temple Mount already. They got the red heifers to consecrate it. You're going to see, as we saw, it'll be built during the tribulation, and then halfway through it, the abomination will go into the Holy of Holies, which is that kind of, building in the middle, surrounded by those 3 smokestacks. At that point, it's kind of given over to the Gentiles for 3.5 years. The 2 witnesses preach outside of this. And then Christ comes back, redeems it. The Jews take it again. He destroys the Antichrist and his army. And then the Millennial Temple becomes the temple for the millennial age. So Ezekiel chapter 40 kind of describes what this temple looks like. 40 through 42 describes the whole kind of the temple dimensions and how the Lord enters his temple. In chapter 43, it says, suddenly the glory of the God of Israel appears from the east. So after that battle, he's going to come, and Yeshua is going to enter the temple from the east. The sound of his coming will be like the roar of rushing waters. This is probably during the Festival of Shelters, during the wedding feast of the Lamb, as we're going to see him enter into his temple. The whole landscape will be shining with his glory. I mean, it's going to be awesome, guys. Awesome thing to see. The vision that Ezekiel saw of this was like the others that he saw by the Keyboard River. If you want to have that vision, you got to go back to Ezekiel, read the beginning, chapter 1 through 10. The glory of the Lord. So Yeshua will come into the temple through the east gateway. All right. When he goes into the east gateway, he'll go into where his temple room will be, right in front of the temple, or right in front of his throne room, I should say. His throne room will be this altar that Israel will put up for him. That's kind of a digital picture I found online of it. I don't know if that's done with Minecraft or what, but it's going to be this big altar in front of his throne room, because you're going to see that the fellowship offerings, these sacrifice to have fellowship with the Lord, will return in the millennial age. You'll see more of that here soon. All right, chapter 44. There's going to be a prince, which is believed by the Jews to be King David. When King David resurrects. Remember that resurrection is not just Christians, as we think. It's also faithful Jews that will resurrect as well to reign with the Messiah. King David being amongst them, it's believed he is going to be the prince during the millennial age that's described in Ezekiel. There's going to be Levites again. There's going to be priests. The east gate that Lord Yeshua enters through will remain closed. We're going to see it's only going to be open on Shabbat, which is the Sabbath, on Saturday, what we call Saturday in the pagan world out here. And also on the new moons, the east gate will be open. There will be that appointed priest, believed to be King David. Lord Yeshua will sit inside the temple. He'll have a throne room in there. The Levites will be the caretakers of the temple. And the family line of Zadok has been identified as the priest line to be the priest of that temple in the millennial age. Here's kind of a picture of Jerusalem during the millennium. You got the temple right there in the middle in blue. You got the priests' procession, the sons of Zadok, kind of living in the temple area as they're the priests of the temple. You got the Levites have a little procession there where their houses are going to be. Remember, they're going to be the caretakers of the actual temple grounds. You're going to have some city suburbs there, the city of Jerusalem. You're going to have the territory of the prince of King David. He's going to have territory going all the way out to the Mediterranean Sea and out to the River Jordan. And then the tribes are each going to have portions of that land assigned to them. Just north of the temple area, the city of Jerusalem, you're going to have land allotted to Judah, and south of Jerusalem, land allotted to Benjamin. Again, this is all in Ezekiel 40s, if you want to read it. Chapter 45 talks about rules for the prince. He must be honest and responsible. He must receive and handle all the offerings. So as offerings are brought to Jesus from all of us, he's going to be the one kind of handling the admin of it, the receiving of it. He'll oversee that the Lord's festivals are celebrated. So all those festivals in Leviticus 23 will be celebrated during the millennium. So, I recommend to us Christians, learn the festivals in Leviticus 23 because we're going to be doing them during the millennium, especially Sukkot. It is prophesied that every year during the millennium, we will all go to Jerusalem for the Festival of Shelters, for that 7-day festival, commemorating the anniversary of the wedding feast of the Lamb. So might as well start learning them now, maybe even start practicing and rehearsing them now for the millennium. Chapter 46 in Ezekiel, that's where it describes that every Shabbat, every Sabbath, and every Rosh Kodesh, every new moon, um, the prince will go and open the east gateway. Remember, that's where Yeshua will go in to take his throne room. He will open it every new moon, every Sabbath, and then people can come. You can go, you're going to be living resurrected body somewhere on earth, wherever the land given to you is. You're going to build your mansion there, whatever. But here's the cool thing about the millennium. Hey, let's go visit the Lord, Let's go visit the Lord this Shabbat, this Sabbath. And let's go to Jerusalem. I don't know how maybe we can travel the way Jesus traveled in his resurrected body and just appear, Go there. The east gate will be opened by the prince, and you can go and from the east gate kind of look at the Lord on his throne in his throne room. How cool would that be? The east will be the main entrance, so from the east gate you'll be able to look straight into the throne room to see Yeshua on his throne. So, and anytime you could go worship him in the flesh. How awesome would that be? The festivals, the north and the south gates will be open so that people can walk through and see the Lord. So here's kind of a picture of it. That the throne room will be, if you could see where the altar is, kind of in the center, right? You got the outer court and then you got the inner court. And in the center there, you got the altar there, kind of looks like a little triangle. Just to the left of that, you got this big building with this entrance. It's kind of a rectangle building. That's his throne room. That's where his throne's going to be and he's going to rule from. So you can see where the east gate is. That's only open on Sabbath, Saturday, Shabbat, and Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, which is when the crescent moon appears every, 28 to 30 days. Okay, on those days, the east gate will be open, and from wherever you are, you can go through the east gate, you can look straight through and see the Lord sitting on his throne. During the festivals, the Leviticus 23 festivals, the north and the south gates will be open so that people can walk through. I could imagine this is because of crowd management. That's my theory. There may be other meaning for why it's the north and the south gate. But you'll enter, it says in 46 verse 9 in Ezekiel, people will come in through the people that come in through the north gate will go out through the south gate, and vice versa. Those who enter through the south gate will go out through the north gate. So it kind of seems like just this flow of people just walking through. And as you're walking through with the crowd, you look as you pass by his throne. And what do you see? You see this. You see our Messiah sitting on his throne, being worshipped as you walk by. All right. Guys, the Millennium's going to be awesome. I can't wait. Can't wait. Come, Lord Jesus. All right, the prince. Every day, the prince, he's going to be a busy guy. This is King David. He's going to be busy. Every day, he's going to give an offering to the Lord. Remember, that altar is right in front of his throne room. The king will go, give an offering to him. Right in front of him, it'll be this very intimate fellowship between this prince and the king, the Messiah, the Lord on his throne. So they're going to have a cool daily relationship. There's King David, lucky King David. The years of Jubilee will be observed. So that 1,000-year reign will be split up into these 50-year segments, these 50-year Jubilees. If you want to learn about the Jubilees, it's in Leviticus 25. Probably something good to learn, as well as we will be living according to the Jubilees in the Millennium. Again, we talked about the home of the priest, the kitchens. If you look at the picture, you see the corners of the outer corners. You see these smokestacks going up. Those are going to be the kitchens. The sacrifices, think about them as, they're not a sacrifice for sin. They're fellowship sacrifices, kind of like going to have a barbecue with the Lord. You come, you bring an offering. The offering gets cooked, and you go and you eat in the presence of the Lord. It's a fellowship with the Lord. Just like we have fellowship meals today, right? Christians share, when they come together, we share a meal. We, eat some food. We eat some meat. That's what the sacrifices, it's the true meaning of the sacrifices in Leviticus. It's a fellowship with God. As you bring the lambs, as you bring, whatever, the goats, the bulls, to be sacrificed and cooked, you're going to share your meal there with the Lord. It's this intimate meal sharing with him. So there you go. More on the on those fellowship sacrifices and meals with the Lord. You could go back to Leviticus and read chapter 1 through 5. It describes it. Misunderstanding. People think it's to pay for sins, and there is some for that. But remember, sins are paid for by the Messiah. The sacrifices are for fellowship with God and with his Messiah. All right. River of healing. So this is cool. Chapter 47 describes this river that will come out from his throne. You can see it there in the picture. Goes through the temple out, and whoever drinks from the river is kind of like this fountain of youth. It's kind of stops your aging. It's a healing river. The trees that come out of the river, they eat fruit from it. They heal. This is because, remember, the remnant of Israel that's there when Christ returns and goes through that whole battle of Armageddon and goes into the millennium, they're still mortal, right? They're not like us who have been resurrected into resurrected bodies. They're still in their original bodies. They're still in their mortal bodies going into the millennium. However, as long as they eat and drink from this river of healing, they're given long life, as we're told in Isaiah, where 100 years isn't even old anymore. They'll be able to live through the 1,000 years as long as they feed off of this river. So this river kind of provides healing for them, kind of like a fountain of youth for them, which is why the people of Israel, the remnant, will be living there in that land, where we will be kind of elsewhere in the world. All right. Here's how that land will be divided. It will be by tribe, going all the way out to the river Euphrates. The name of the city will be called The Lord is There. All right, because he will physically be there during the millennium. But what about us, right? We're not living in the land. Us, resurrected Christians. That land is going to be purely Jews, resurrected Israel, and the remnant, the mortal remnant that survived the tribulation and entered into the millennium. How about us? Where are we going to be, right? Well, it says in Isaiah that he's creating a new heaven, new earth. That's coming, right? As we said, when he comes, it's going to flatten. The earth is going to look new. It's going to look different. It's not going to look how the maps have it today, right? It says islands. We read in islands will be moved from their places. Hills will be flattened. The ocean's kind of taken out, right, during the bowl. So the earth is going to be really new. It's going to be kind of this big old plain. It's not going to be like the old one, and we're going to be glad about it, right? We're going to rejoice. It's going to be a Sabbath rest for the earth. Jerusalem will be a place of happiness. Her people will be a source of joy. We will always rejoice over Jerusalem and her people. No more crying, no more weeping in the millennium. Babies will no longer die. So there'll be babies there, even when they're a few days old. Adults will no longer die. They will live a full life, right? Still be feeding off of that river of healing. People will no longer be considered old at 100. Only the curse will die that young. So that's interesting. Maybe there are some that maybe took the number of the beast, but did not go to that battle in Armageddon and are still roaming around. They will still die. In those days, people will live in the houses they build and eat the fruit of their own vineyards. So there you go. Your question is, what about us during the millennium? We're going to have our own houses that we're going to build. We're going to eat the fruit of our own vineyards, right? Grow our own food. We're not going to have to worry about anybody invading us or taking our stuff. That 1,000 years will be a time to finally just rest. enjoy, stop our toil, worship, delight in our Messiah and in his kingdom. We will not work in vain. He will answer us before we even call to him. We'll have this awesome communication with him in Jerusalem. The wolf and the lamb will feed together. Lions will eat hay like a cow. Snakes will still eat dust. But in those days, no one will get hurt or destroyed on his holy mountain. I, the Lord, have spoken. So again, it's a time of peace, 1,000-year time of rest. The enemies of Jerusalem who survived the plague, so maybe those who took the numbers but did not go to that battle of Armageddon, they're still zombie looking, right? They still got the sores. Even they will, if they survive, will go up to Jerusalem each year to worship the Lord of Heaven's army and to celebrate the Festival of Shelters. Check that out. Any nation in the world, okay, so wherever you're living during this millennium, know this: you cannot refuse to go and worship during the Festival of Shelters every year. You refuse to go and worship the King, the Lord of Heaven's army, wherever your land is, then you will get no rain. Even the people of Egypt, if the people of Egypt refuse to attend the festival, the Lord will punish them. So there'll be people living in the land of Egypt. I don't know why that's specifically mentioned. Egypt and the other nations will all be punished if they don't go celebrate the Festival of Shelters. So I would start looking into the Festival of Shelters now. I would start looking into the Leviticus 23 festivals now. Start learning them. Why not? Start practicing them. Start rehearsing them. If anything, use it as a look forward into the millennium that's coming. Because on that day, right, even the harness bells of the horses will be inscribed with "Holy to the Lord." The cooking pots in the temple of the Lord will be as sacred as the basins used beside the altar. Every cooking pot in Jerusalem and Judah will be holy. All who come to worship will be free to use any of those pots to boil their sacrifices I talked about. You can go and share a meal when you want with the Lord in Jerusalem. The millennium's going to be awesome, guys. All right, we'll get our Sabbath rest. Jesus will be in his temple. We'll have our resurrected bodies. We'll each live in our own land in peace. We'll go see the Lord whenever we want. We can see him specifically on Shabbat, on the new moon, and we'll go for the festivals, especially the Festival of Shelters. It's mandated every year to worship him on his throne. Okay, looking forward to the millennium. After the millennium comes the final judgment, and so we'll talk about that in the next class. God bless.